where I was going to be. And the guy was like, man, how many months or how long do you have? And I said, you know, 21, 22 months. And he goes, dude, you're counting months. I'm counting, counting years. And I was like, oh, well, never mind. You know,
My bad.
yeah, yeah. I was like, okay, well, we won't talk about that anymore. So yeah, yeah.
All right, Asher. Well, I thank you for being on Black Light Mass Incarceration Show to us. Share your story and your journey and the things that you're doing to change your community, because it's important that we uplift anybody who has been in the carceral system, whether it's months, years, days. It affects you regardless of how long you've been in there. And so, yeah, just start off and tell us, a little bit about you, and then you can go into your story.
Yeah, so my name's Noah Asher, and I'm officially a published author as about a month ago. Very excited about that. And other than that, I'm also a business owner. I own my own business. When I first got out, I actually went to a very popular hotel chain, and I just applied for a front desk job. And after I became at the front desk, 3 weeks later, they actually promoted me to the general manager position, which is just the grace of God. I knew nothing about what I was doing. And so just a lot of trial and errors through that process. And then I moved into operations a few years after that. And then I realized I could do what I'm doing with these hotels. I can do it as my own business. And so I left the hotel business and started my own consulting. And I've been doing that ever since.
So tell us about the consulting business.
It's really cool. I'm doing a lot of these undercover assessments is what I call them. It's a lot of like secret shopping. But what I do is I go into these restaurants and hotels and other small businesses and go uncover, and I take notes, take pictures, and I create an assessment based off of what I see and then off of what I believe they could improve on. And then I meet with the ownership or the management team, whoever hired me. I meet with them a few days later and go over the results. And we also sometimes go in afterward and actually teach the team and work with the team. Um, a lot of assessments is hard just to do one. A lot of businesses will hire us for 3 or 4 assessments before we ever reveal who we are.
Right. So since you do that, tell us, have you spoke to anybody about the importance of hiring anybody that's formerly incarcerated with the record?
Yeah, I think people would be very, very shocked to know how many former incarcerated people are in the hotel industry, because I'm assuming they're probably like, oh, I leave my belongings in here. That's scary, but
Mhm.
there's nothing to fear. A lot of these men and women that I personally hired, I would hire them from transitional centers, and I did that on purpose. You have laundry, people in housekeeping, people doing grounds and maintenance, and time again, they proved to be the best employees simply because they wanted it. They had that money. They wanted to show themselves and show the world that, hey, you know what? I've done my time and I'm ready now to make a difference. And blow your mind how many people that we would hire within the hotel industry. And it was really cool. A lot of these hotels are franchised, and so what would happen is I'd get with my ownership team and go, let's do this with all the properties. I promise you, one thing for sure, especially a transitional center, if you ever dealt with anyone in the transitional centers, is they have to come to work. And so when it comes to reliability, you don't have them calling out. You know, they want to get out of that center, they want to come to work, and they want to make that money. And so it works. It benefits the hotel, but it also benefits the employee as well. Yeah, the individual.
And a lot of those skills are transferred from prison to the workforce, because a lot of them do maintenance at prisons. A lot of them work in the kitchen at prisons. So it's basically just
Yes.
transferring your skill from prison into the real world, and then being able to actually make a living wage and not, make 25 cents an hour.
Right.
And so that's important. I did speak to Penn State a few months ago, their hospitality department, and they were actually doing a podcast as well on the importance of, like, what should they look for when they get out into the HR departments, especially when it comes to hiring people that are formerly incarcerated, and how important it is to give them that chance, to prove that, that what they did is behind them, and what they're doing now is something that they're trying to do to change their life and take care of their family. So it's important that we keep lifting up the importance of hiring people formerly incarcerated, because there's still a lot of people who can't find jobs. There's still a lot of
Yes.
jobs, even though you have banned the box, that still won't hire people because they have a violent felony, or they have a certain charge that they just don't feel like would fit in, um, into their business. And so it's important that we always give people a second chance and stop. I think America likes to label people and just write them off,
Right.
period. And we have to stop that, because that is why we are where we are when it comes to the criminal justice system.
Yeah, and I would say that everything is like a step, right? If you want to be the general manager, if you want to be an director of operations, you have to start somewhere. And now I'm thankful for the journey I was on and how kind of quick it was, but that I understand that doesn't happen everywhere. But I'll say this, I didn't go into the popular hotel chain's headquarters and go, "Hey, what's up? Give me a job." I started at the bottom, and I was prepared to start at the bottom. And I realized, you know what, if I start at the bottom and I come to work, I show up, if I'm supposed to be there at 8, start at 8, I'm there at 7:55, I'm there early. I'm there prepared, ready to go. And they saw my work ethic. They saw my character. They got to see a lot of traits of me and to really learn who I am. That when they saw, my record, my rap sheet, then they realized, well, that's we don't care what he's done. We care where he's at now, and we care where he's going.
Mhm.
And so I tell men and women all the time, I'm like, you don't walk into McDonald's headquarters. You start at the local McDonald's and you build your way up, that sort of thing.
Yeah. Do you have any advice for people that are coming home? Because I know sometimes they might have anxiety, like trying to get into the workforce. Being out in the world is different from working in a prison than working out here with different personalities, and just it's a lot more freer than working in a prison. And I know sometimes people have anxiety about that. And would you have any advice for anybody who may be experiencing anything like that?
Yeah, I'll never forget. When I was told, "Hey, you're going home," and I think it was like a week or something. I remember I was so excited and I was so anxious at the same time because now I've waited for this moment. I started singing, "I've been waiting for this moment," all my life, right? And so here I am. I'm in that moment. But then I started laying there and I would go, "Oh man, I actually got to figure out housing. I got to figure out a job. I got to figure out a vehicle, all of these things." Then I started to get so overwhelmed that I started going, I don't know about all this now. I'm better off just laying here in the bed and reading a book every day. And so what took for me was I had to go, all right, one step at a time. And it was, what's the most important thing? Obviously, housing. I needed somewhere to live, and then move up the ladder. If you want to up the staircase, if you want to get to the top of the staircase, if you just look upward at the top step, it can be very overwhelming. But if you just
Yeah.
do one step at a time, before you know it, you're at the top, and you can look back one day and go, "Wow, I started." The words of Drake, the wise, wise words of Drake. You can say you started from the bottom, now you're here. I had to. I say that in my book, and people are like, "Oh," shaking their heads. I'm sure when they read that, but it's it's so true though. And so I recommend always just take one step at a time. Write a list out and go, okay, what am I needing? Right? What's if you have probation, parole? Uh, First and foremost, what do you have to do to maintain those requirements? And then see and come up with a solution of what's the most important, and then work down that list. And to me, it makes it way more sense. It's less overwhelming for sure.
It does. It does. So I know that you said that you had did a little bit of time in prison, and so will you speak to us about your experience and the things that you saw being incarcerated, and what did you take from that experience?
I I would say first and foremost, when people ask me that question, I get asked that a lot, and it's almost like PTSD in some ways because some of the moments were so horrible. I was at this one prison when I first went. It was like diagnostics or something. that everyone goes through, and it's one of the worst in America for this. And um, I wasn't actually terrified of the inmates. I was terrified of the officers.
Okay.
They had paintball guns, and if you talked in the chow line, they shoot you. It was the weirdest thing.
Oh, that's new. I
Yeah.
haven't heard of
Oh well, it was very interesting. And then I could tell you story after story. It was a lot, and it was literally just the grace of God that kept me protected and safe in there, because I just wanted to get my time done. I wanted to get out of there. I wanted to go home. I wanted to eat pizza, eat real food and get out of there. And so, so many moments I could take up a whole day just sharing stories of moments. But I would say this is it wasn't fun, and it's almost like I can't justify why someone makes fight somebody or does some sort of action like that. But I will say that I don't know if you've ever seen a caged animal, but
it.
if they're caged for too long, when they do get out, they go berserk. And
Mm-hmm.
you know that's what's happening in the system is a lot of that. I actually was talking to some U.S. senators about 2 years ago, and they've been fighting for cameras in all federal prisons. And I said, cool, you need to do state prisons too. And I was telling them that one of their biggest reasons for it is because of inmate on inmate crime. And I said, oh, I mean, that's there, but you need to pay attention to the officer on inmate crime. It's just as bad. And unfortunately, when an inmate responds back to the officer, the officer's walking away with any sort of penalty, while the inmates taking the extra sentencing or what comes upon them.
The beating or the death. I mean,
Yeah,
it's a lot. I know here we actually have cameras in a lot of our prisons, but they're manipulated, or they know the blind spots to take them to discipline them in a way that they shouldn't be disciplining them. So that's still a concern. Like, so what I was trying to do was to advocate for a change of culture. Like the culture they have in Norway, because the culture that we have in our prisons is causing so much trauma. Like if you didn't have any type of trauma before you went to jail or prison, you will definitely have some type of trauma coming
yes,
home. And then there's no mental health, and that's another thing that am working on currently. Is holistic mental health and getting that in the prisons, because there's virtually no mental health at all in the prisons. And then you have to deal with that trauma, and then if you had trauma before you went to prison, you're adding on top of that trauma being in prison or jail, and then they're just letting you go. And so, unless you have the real instinct and mind frame to be able to self control your own mental health while you're in there, which takes a lot, because I mean, it's not somewhere easy for you to try to maintain mental health in a prison or a jail.
yeah,
Um, you know what I mean? And so it's important that we really put mental health at the forefront when it comes to prisons and jails, because it's not there. And so we're
right,
just having a bunch of broken people coming home, and then they have family members, they're trying to get in back in contact with family members. A lot of them have social anxiety disorders where they can't even communicate with people, or they're being so used to being stuck in a cell all day, and especially if they're in solitary confinement for years, that's all
yeah,
they want to do is be stuck in a room and not really communicate and get out and be sociable. And so I was really trying to push those two, because those two are important. Like what they do in Norway is they have relationships with the correctional officers. It's not me versus them or them versus us. It's we're in this together, and we're gonna get you together, because this is not your forever home, you know.
right,
And they work on integration and reintegrating back into society. And then they have their prisons are different. It's not like here when you're in a warehouse with a bunch of metal and concrete. They have actual privacy. They have rooms, they have showers, they have lighting, they have the scenery is like green grass. And so a lot of things that they don't have here, and a lot of those things can make a difference when you are taking somebody away from their family. and then supposedly trying to rehabilitate them, which that's not here in America. But that's what I was really trying to push, was just a change of culture, because
Yeah.
those are the people that's supposed to be helping our people get back to where they need to be so they can come home if they do let them come home. You know what I mean?
Right.
And that's really important, because
Yeah,
it's
and
just
it's like it's one-sided too. Let's use the lighting thing that you mentioned a minute ago. I get like, okay, at some point maybe there was a fight, and so it's like, okay, well, let's always leave the lights on. Well, that's your solution. You only looked at it one way. You know what I mean? And so now you don't sleep unless you put something over your eyes and then it falls off. If you roll over, you never get that true REM sleep while you're locked up because of that. And then they're coming in and out. I would have officers in an open dorm. They'd come in at 3 in the morning to do their little walkthrough, and they're singing loud. They have this little beeper thing, and they're like hitting the cells, the beds as they walk by. And I'm like, why are you why are you doing this? Like, that makes no sense to me. Um, like it blows my mind what they're doing, and it comes down to one word, and it's accountability. And ironically, the system wants you to be accountable for your actions. That's why you go to jail or you go to prison. Yet they don't want accountability for themselves and for how they're treating inmates.
right.
And I'm sorry, but like what you're talking about with making it a more than just concrete walls, I'll tell you this: you sit behind that wall so long, and you believe the lies so much that all you are is an inmate, all you are is inmate number 1002, whatever. You
No,
start to believe that, and that becomes your new identity. And so when you get out, you think that's who you are. They're not teaching, they're teaching punishment, but they're not teaching transfiguration. And without transfiguration, you're just putting them back in the system to then get back, or get back in the world to then get turned back into the system. It's like being on a hamster wheel. They are using so much momentum and so much money, yet you're never going anywhere.
anywhere. And that's the point, because we know that, as we said earlier, the prison system is a $1 billion industry. And, not knowing that a lot of your retailers and restaurants use prison labor, you know what I mean?
Right.
To get things done at a cheaper price. Like, our corrections enterprise makes everything, literally, like your state license plates, your glasses,
Wow.
furniture for offices, and they're selling this stuff and they're making a profit, but then the people that are actually doing the work are getting paid 25 cents. I think the most you can get paid is maybe like $2 an hour. You know what I mean? So
Wow.
what is that?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And so it's time it's time for America to look away from free labor, and understand that the economy still can boom if everybody's putting in. If everybody's a
Right.
working citizen, they're paying taxes, they're taking care of their families, your economy can still boom without having, slavery. Like, don't get me wrong. There's just some people who probably can't live amongst society. But I still don't think that they should be in a prison. To me, it still should be a holistic mental health type of facility, that they're always getting some type of treatment, because they need that. You know what I'm saying? They're still getting treated like a human, but the ones that can be rehabilitated, there should be a plethora of resources for them inside of prison. But even before they get there,
Yes.
reentry starts when you get there, not when you get out. It starts as soon as
Right.
you get there, you know? And that's one thing that they fail to realize. Like in Norway, they start reentry plan as soon as you get there. Day one, they're working out your reentry plan and not waiting until, a week before you're released to say, oh, well, let's try to find you some transitional housing. And
Yeah.
that we have hardly any transitional housing in
No,
North
and
Carolina.
same in Georgia. And what they do is, because coming from the hotel industry where I was hiring people from the transitional centers, it would make me so mad that they would know, like, here's your date of leaving, and they never worked with them to actually find somewhere to live. And then when it was time for them to leave, they put them all at this old motel. So I'm like, oh, cool. So you're still incarcerated. You know what I mean? Like, you're living with all the people that you just experienced incarceration with. And to me, when it comes to growth, I don't want to be with people at my level. I'll never try to succeed and grow and go deeper and bigger if I'm only hanging out with people on my level. So you have to grow. And if your only housing option is that, what's that? I mean, that's ridiculous.
That's nothing, that keeps you at the bare minimum still, and so like
Yeah,
even here, they won't even contact the transitional housing until like a day or two before the people are getting released. And, they have to make arrangements. So a lot of them can't even take them in. So they're sending them to shelters. Who wants to go to a shelter after you've just been incarcerated?
right.
That's being reincarcerated. You know what I mean? Because you got
Yeah,
time you got to be in, you got time you got to get out. And so, we have to reimagine a lot of things here in America when it comes to the carceral system, when it comes to reentry, when it comes to mental health, when it comes to addiction in court and court fees and fines and bills. It's a lot of things that has to be reimagined. And it still seems like I see states that are still voting in, criminalizing poverty and opening new jails and new prisons. And that's never going to be the answer. You know what I mean?
yeah.
It's resources.
And I feel like there's more stipulations that keep coming. More, it's almost like more chains, even though we're supposed to be free from these chains. You just got out of incarceration, but they're adding more and more chains. And I feel like the reason why is because politicians, when they get on the news, they will say, you don't want this, this former affair living near you. And then they go, but here we are, we come in, we're the hero that will save the day and keep your family safe by adding this rule. And so even though sometimes there's already enough rules and regulations, they're adding more just so they can look like they're a hero and they're a superhero coming in to save your family and your friends and your neighborhood. And it's like, that's not the case. When you're talking about Norway and what they do with day one, you want to know when I was asked, hey, why did you do what you did? It wasn't until I got out. It was years later that anyone ever posed that question. And ironically, the court system in America is based off of um, when they're trying people in court is what is did motive,
Mm-hmm.
right? So
Mm-hmm.
why was I never asked what my motive was or what my reasoning was? What sort of anything to do with why did you do what you did? If we can get to the root of the problem, hey, why'd you steal? Right? Why did you rob? Why did you hurt someone? Why did you do these things? If you get down to the root of the problem, what you're talking about with mental health, then people can be like, you know what? That's my trigger. I know we use that word a lot right now, but it's true. It's like, what is my trigger? What is that thing that makes me want to do wrong? And does it stem from childhood? Does it stem from, some sort of um, trauma? But we have to get down to those questions with mental health, but we're not. We're not seeing any sort of change in people until after the fact. And I'm sitting right here in my office. I have a letter right here from a U.S. senator that said, congrats on your book and everything that you're doing, and that makes me feel good. But then my very next question is like, okay, well, what are we doing together to make to make real change happen? Like, okay, cool, you reached out. Now let me reach back out and let's do something about it. I'm tired of sitting on it because so many people, I've seen so many people just get so hurt by the system and they feel like it's, oh, you have a 10 do 3, that sort of thing. But it doesn't matter, oh, you have a 10-year sentence because it feels like a life sentence because of all the regulations.
That is true. So tell us about your book. You come out with a book. It has an amazing title. So tell us about it.
Yeah, the book is called Chaos Overcoming the Overwhelming, and you can anywhere you want to buy books, Barnes and Noble, Walmart, Amazon, Books a Million. And what's really cool about this book, it is like a self-help, it reads like a self-help nonfiction Christian type book. We look at different people in the Bible and how people have overcome their overwhelming times. And I do mention a little bit of my story, but I do it through hope, help, humor. And so I do off the rip, I say, this is not a autobiography. I'm not someone who was born in Philly and shooting b-ball outside of school and a couple of guys who are not up to no good. You know, that's it's not like that sort of story. You know, that's for the freshest of princes to share. You know, so it's more of I give little tidbits of my story, but uh, just so they can have like a reference point of more of, hey, I've been there, done that. But there's a moment if we can all overcome. I say that chaos is such an interchangeable word for people incarcerated. That word is like, yep, chaos describes me, but it also describes loss, rejection, addiction, illness. And so the list is endless when it comes to that. And that's one thing that's really cool. What we're seeing, my team and I, from this, from reviews and things about this book, is that people are like, oh man, that hit me straight to my core. I've been struggling with addiction, or I've been struggling with someone in my family just recently passing. And so that's what I like about it. It's such a good word that really describes life.
Like,
And yeah, and I don't know. I would say that this book is, it was therapeutic to write. I'll say some of it, even though I've been years out of the system now. I wrote some of it while incarcerated. And what was funny about it is I wrote it as letters to like my family, and it was therapy. I'm telling them, "Hey, I'm gonna get through this. We're gonna get through this." Like I knew that. I had no idea. It was me kind of just telling myself that over and over and over again. You know, like a- anyway, I just had to write this. I had to get it off my chest. And so when I was in my rehabilitation phase, and really going through what I call in the book, I call it the aftermath. And I talk about how once the storm dissipates and the enemy retreats, a lot of times in our lives we're left with rubble and we're left to rebuild from the ground up. And how do we do that? And that's like what the third section of the book is about. And when I was in my aftermath, that's when I was like, I'm putting pen to paper. I'm going to make this a thing. And and that's really how it was birthed.
that's amazing. And it's hope. You had hope and you had faith. And that's what a lot of people lose when they go into prison. They lose faith and they lose hope. They feel like, they're stuck in this situation that is so horrible, and they're being treated as if they're not even human. And it's easy to lose faith. It's easy to lose hope. There's people that lose family members. They lose a lot being in prison and being in jail, and
Yes.
so it's so easy to lose yourself really fast in a situation like that. And so your book offers hope. That's what it offers. It
Right.
offers hope and faith.
Yeah, I tell people I want it to be the brightest of lights for people who are in their darkest of pits. Have said that so many times recently when I've promoted this book, and it's so true. And I start off the book talking about getting people off that ledge.
Yeah.
That's where the hope part comes in. It's telling people, hey, you can step back a little bit. You're gonna get through this. You got this. And then once they get off the ledge, that's when the help part comes in, because now it's like, okay, now that you're off the ledge, how do you get through this? How do you overcome? And that's where the help part comes in. And I believe the humor is very key, very essential, because in my darkest moments, I felt like if I could laugh about it, if I could make a joke about it, I took ownership over it. Like I owned it instead of it owning me. And that was very important for me to include in this book. And I'll say that people are saying they'll laugh, like in one chapter they'll laugh and then they're crying in the same chapter, and that makes me feel good because it's not like sad tears; it's like inspirational tears of wow, I am somebody. Because I do feel like one thing chaos does, no matter what that word means for you, when you think of the word chaos, it does strip away our identity a lot of times.
Mhm.
Oh, I'm a lost cause. I'm an inmate. Um, I'm useless. You know, I'm the leftovers. You know, and I think I'm alone. That's one word that comes up a lot. And when it's pointing people back, do you remember in the movie The Lion King where Simba was called a murderer by his own uncle, right? And so he runs away and he finds these guys who teach him a new philosophy on life, the Hakuna Matata.
Mhm.
And it's just kind of like, yeah, you can be whatever, you can do whatever. And he just left life. He left his family, he left his friends, he left everything he knew just to give it all away because of what he thought he was, which was a murderer and a failure. And it wasn't until his dad showed up in the sky and said, "Hey, Simba, remember who you are." And in that moment, that's when Simba kind of woke up and was like, you know what, you're right. And he went back and he faced his situation. He faced his family. He faced his friends. He faced his community head on. But it was remembering who he really was, not what he was labeled as.
Mhm.
Yeah. He was labeled as a murderer. He was labeled as an inmate. He was labeled as all these bad things. But when we start realizing who we are, and I mean, I don't want to get too spiritual, but it's like also remembering whose we are. A lot of times, that's when we can understand, and rebuilding can really take shape, and that we can really be doing what the prison system should be doing, which is rehabilitating ourselves. Yeah, yeah. So
Yeah, and that's an amazing light to look at it, because a lot of people, like I said, America likes to label and then just cancel people. And so when you're able to get over that hump of the cancellation and the labeling,
yeah,
then there's all types of new light for anybody who can get over that. It's just getting over that. And then, if you don't have that support, because a lot of people don't have that support system, whether, the family members are upset that they did, commit a crime and get put in prison, or whether they're falsely accused of something and they just, still the family's not behind. A lot of people don't have that support. So being able to create your own support when you don't have that support can get you a very long way and get you over that useless or worthless feeling that the prison tends to make you feel like. And so, I mean, that's a beautiful light how you put it in, to remember who you are, remember where you come from. And then, I mean, even sometimes, just sitting in prison, even though it's a bad thing, can help you find your purpose and your passion, which then, you can use those things to rehabilitate your own self and get out in the world and make a difference. And so it's
yeah,
important, that we get over that and really understand who we are and not let other people or things label us and make us feel like we're useless, because we're all here for a reason, regardless of
yeah.
what you feel you know you know
For me personally, it was when I stopped saying, "Hey God, why me? Why me? Why me?" and started saying, "God, use me, use me, use me." When I switched over, that's when my pain started to produce purpose. And I believe that our pain will produce purpose, and then our purpose can produce a platform. But I say that with hope for people, but I also say it with warning, because keep in mind, when you stand on a platform, that means everyone can see you a little better, right? You're a little bit raised up. That means you're an easier target. You're an easier, that a way to get looked at, and the spotlight is on you in that moment. And for me, I always just tell people, like, the world may try to cancel me, but God has called me, and that's where I put my rest and my hope is that I just don't care anymore. Um, and it's so funny the way our society is with social media and things. If you,
Yes.
it's like, oh, I was just trying to correct them. I was trying to critique them. No, you're trying to shame them. There's a difference. If you direct message me and tell me, "Hey, this is how I feel," or "When you said this, I didn't agree," that's trying to say, "Hey, there's correction in love." But when you blast somebody on social media, you're only doing that to shame them. You're only doing that to
That's
shame
right.
them. And it's like we don't need any more shame.
At all. And I think people need to understand it's okay to agree to disagree. Like, everybody has their own thoughts and opinions and how they move, and it's okay if your thoughts and opinions don't align with somebody else. It doesn't mean that they're the worst person in the world or that you can't stand them. It's okay to agree to disagree. And I think that's another thing that, especially in today's society and social media, it's like, oh, if you don't agree with me, then you're this and you're that. And so,
Yeah.
that tends to tear people down. Like, social media does tear people all the way down. And it has a tendency to do that, especially our younger generation. Because a lot of people look for validation and they feel like social media gives them validation. Likes gives them validation. Hearts gives them validation. But you got to go find your own validation, and not through somebody else. You know what I mean? Like,
Right.
doing your purpose and your passion is your validation. You know what I mean? If you're changing one
Yes.
life at a time, that's your validation right there. You don't really necessarily have to get appraised all the time. And a lot of people look for that because of neglect in their childhood, or just neglect in life period. But understand that you don't need validation from anybody, you
And I
know.
think that's very important that you said that for people who are trying to start like reentry processes, because sometimes you're going to be looking for that praise and there's going to be none. You need to praise yourself. You need to be happy with going like, yeah, you go girl, you go guy, like you got this. You need to tell
Yeah.
yourself that. Like that's where it needs to come from, because if you're looking for it in someone else or something else, a lot of times that's really that isn't that what a lot of people are locked up for? They looked for something else, and that vice that they got, that it became their addiction, right? It's almost like a byproduct of what they were actually looking for. And so, yeah, be content with yourselves. But contentment and complacement is two different things. You can be content with where you're at. If you just got out and you have a one bedroom, one bathroom apartment, like be content with that. Just celebrate that moment because it's a victory. But also don't be complacent though and go where it's like, well, I'm good with this. This is all I ever want. No, because then things can start creeping back up from your past. I believe, and so it's pushing forward, not looking backward, but also being able to praise though when you do have those victories, no matter how big or small they are.
Mhm. And that's a good point. You be content with what you have, but then you always try to push that bar a little bit higher so you don't become complacent. So always aim to push a little bit higher, whether you set a goal for a month from now, 6 months from now. As long as you're pushing that bar, higher each time, then
Right.
that just could do wonders instead of being complacent. And complacent will keep you where you don't need to be, or either take you back down to where you were. And so we don't want to do that. And that's really important. So tell us about some of the work that you do in the community to try to, curve the situations that we have with the current landscape of the criminal justice system.
Yeah. I kind of smile when you said that because it's so funny. I really, in the book, I talk about how to walk through when you're in the midst of chaos, and then when you're in the aftermath, how to rebuild. And I was really like, how can I be best used for people who are in the midst, or for people who are in their aftermath? And in my state, I don't really have a choice but to help people more who are in their aftermath, because it's so funny. You can call like a prison and be like, oh, let me tell you this awesome success story, and tell you everything I've done. Internationally acclaimed, author with this
Mhm.
and this and this. And they're like, cool. You're an inmate. Like that's really what they want to tell me. They don't say it, but that's what they want to say. And
Right.
at first I got mad. I'll never forget. I called one. They called me. The chaplain called me. I was returning their call, and it was like 4:05, and he left at 4. And I was just like, "Hey, hey there, can I speak?" Just as nice as I can be. But I was like, "Hey there, can I speak to the chaplain?" Before I could even finish the word chaplain, he's gone. He left at 4. And, and it just like triggered something in my brain. I was like, "Ma'am, can you let me finish my sentence before you cut me off?" And she was kind of like, "Excuse me." I'm like, I mean, we're not going to do this back and forth. Like, you don't know me, first off. Secondly, I'm not one of your inmates that you can just talk to like this. This is not how we're going to do things. I said, the chaplain called me. I was returning his call, and I was just seeing if he's available. If he's not, that's okay. But that's how we're going to communicate. And I got off that
Mhm.
phone, and I was like, yeah, I'm not ready to help people. I'm not ready to go back in the system and like help like that, because like it still triggers me when I see them act that way. Some of the officers, because if anything, I'm not saying that I'm somebody, but after some of the phone calls I actually made, I would think that they would be wanting to call me and wanting to help show people that lives can be changed, for the better. But what I'm starting to see is that's really not the case. And so for people who are in their aftermath, though, like these addiction centers and rehab centers that I speak at, I get nothing but the kindest people who want to be like, yeah, I'm doing this. It's like their mission. It's like I'm doing this because I want these people to find change. And so that's why I help people more who are in their aftermath. All the proceeds of my book do go to provide copies for prison libraries and rehab centers. So I am doing that to help people who are in the midst. But for the aftermath, I'm seeing greater results. I'm actually working with some state senators right now to pass a new bill for our state where it'll be everyone does the last 12 months of their sentence in a transitional center or a halfway house. And I just believe that'll set people up for success to take some of that chaos off of them when they first get out.
Yeah. And then it'll help them actually transition because I hear so many people who, are coming home and don't want to come home. Like they've been so institutionalized that they're scared to come home. And so if you're already semi transitioning back within that year, then that can help kind of take a lot of the anxiety off and kind of, get them back to where, okay, I'm not as institutionalized. I can kind of start living my life. And I think that's extremely important, as well as ensuring that they have the bare minimums like their ID, because I know a lot of prisons don't help you get that stuff they're supposed to, but they don't, or they wait till like a day before you're about to get out and be like, "Hey, fill out your form for your ID," knowing it has to be sent in the mail now,
Right.
or I've had a situation where a lot of people are saying that their social security cards are missing and they're about to go home and they need their social security card. It's like, well, where is it at? What is the staff doing? Because that's in the jacket, so that's administration. You know what I mean? And they can't
Right.
touch their jacket. So it's like, where is it going? So just ensuring that they have the bare minimum of ID when they come home, Social Security when they come home. I was working on housing because a lot of people have to go back to public housing, and if you have a felony, you can't go back to public housing. I know one of our counties, Alamance County, which is Burlington, has kind of revamp the way they do it, and they actually have a graduation program where you go through these classes, and then eventually if you have family members or your children are in public housing, that you can graduate back into public housing if you have a record, because you can't just say, oh well, you have a felony, you can't live here. I mean, that makes no
Right.
sense. People need housing. That's the first thing they need when they come home, is a house. A job and a
Yeah.
house are the two things that they need to even succeed, to even try to succeed. And so, just by erasing the standards and requirements for housing is extremely important to set people up for success,
Yeah.
and as well as the job too, because I mean those are the two things that I hear constantly that people who are coming home are struggling with, especially moms, because the incarceration rate of women is growing by the day, and a lot of them have children, and so they can't even come home and have somewhere to live because sometimes they don't have family that can support them. A lot of times, like I said, the family can't house you there because they have restrictions and rules. The landlord may not want you there. The housing may not want you there, and so we really have to, ease these restrictions and stop all these tough restrictions because you've been incarcerated. That you
Yeah.
can't get life insurance, you can't do this, you can't do that.
Yeah. It's kind of funny, the whole, they want to pat themselves on the back and say, oh, we took away the box on employment. Oh, what about the box on housing? Right? What about the box? Because that is setting people up right off the rip from with failure. You don't have somewhere to lay your head at night. That if you don't have somewhere to lay your head and if you can't eat, those are two things that'll make you'll do anything for your family and for yourself. And that's like it's so unfair. And with these transitional centers and halfway houses, the point of them is supposed to be to make some money so that you can have something. And not like to buy some new Jordans. It's to be able to buy and put up. When you think about the initial cost of when you get out. Let's go through it. An apartment, but not just 1 month's rent. A lot of times it's last month's rent. And if they find out you're a felon and they kind of quote work with you, then they're probably going to ask for another deposit. Before you know it, it's like, what's up? We need $3,000 almost. By the time you're done. And then most jobs you have to be able to drive to or get to. And then, so if you have to have a vehicle, if it's so far away, which really, because you're willing to take any job that will get you, sometimes you're working 20, 30, 40 minutes away simply because that's the job that hired you. And so now to get somewhere 30 minutes away, you have to have a vehicle. And if you have a vehicle, you have to have insurance. Or if you get pulled over, guess what? You get arrested and you're right back in the system without insurance. And so all of these fees, you have to have thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars the day you get out, not the week that you get out, the day you get out.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll say this: I had a probation officer. Praise God for him. I mean, I told him, I said, I feel like I know I'm rebuilding my life, and I said, I know that it's mine to hold the hammer, but I believe it's your job to every once in a while hand me a nail. And this is where it's a team effort. And he said, dude, I'm going to use that line, to all my other people. And I said, you take it, copyrighted it. No, I'm just kidding. But I was like, take it, run with it. But I was so thankful for him because it was like a moment where we realized we're doing this together, and it has to be a moment where we're doing life together. And for a while, I was super sick, and I thought my life was over.
Go ahead. Yes, keep talking.
I thought my life was over a year and a half ago, and just really struggled with lupus. But even before that, it was kind of funny. I was um, telling my probation officer at the time. I told him, I said, listen, I was so sick, I thought I was dying. And I said, I know that I can't give my probation officer anything, but if I'm dead, it doesn't matter. And I said, I put you in my will. And he laughed. He said, why would you put me in your will? And I said, because I said, you gave me a shot. You refused to look at me as just another inmate. You you praised when I had something to celebrate, you praised me for it. Those things are unheard of. And I
Amazing.
said, yeah. And I said, because of that, I said, yeah, if I were to die right now, I said, you're in my will, dude. And I told him that as a joke, but I really do mean it. I mean, if something would have happened to me, I would want him to know just how much of an impact he made in my life. And I know if he was doing it in my life, he was doing it in others. And I just wanted him to know, like, that's unheard of. Praise God for you. And I think that when you get out, you have all of these things, and that's what you need. You need people that can surround you. That you have to understand when you get out, you are the one with the hammer, but you do need people that will surround you and hand you nails to make it a completed product.
And see, that's so amazing. That's a part of a support system that a lot of people don't have. And just one person can make that difference for you. Just like how your probation officer did. And that is unheard of. A lot of probation officers are strictly by the books. You got to do this, this, and this, and this. And if you don't, I'm locking your tail right back up. And it's important that we have more sympathetic people when it comes to probation officers, correctional officers, to help people be able to find their way, because a lot of times people just need that little push. And if you got somebody to give you that little push and really believe in you, and just give you that little bit of support, can make the world of difference for anybody.
Right.
And so
Yeah. And
it's
what's funny is he made sure I did everything I was supposed to do. That was with my requirements and all that. But I had such respect for him that I was like, I'm not going to, one, I don't want to get locked back up again. But two, I was like, I'm going to show him that I can do this. It was respect. It was a level of respect and loyalty, even to him, to go, nah, like, you've believed in me. I'm not going to let you down. And I'm
yeah.
dang sure not going to let myself down at this point. And so, um, that's what I had. And because of that, I considered that part being reentry, aftermath sort of care. And so that's why I also feel so obligated to help people find that sort of help. One of the things, I'm working with a little organization that does um, faith-based organization, and we're looking at doing a faith-based halfway house once this bill gets passed, and we'll actually call it the aftermath. and the tagline is going to say where rebuilding begins. And so it's so cool. I was in a transitional center for a few months, and I I owe every all of my success in a way. I'll say that was the that initial step I needed to get on the right
Needed.
track.
Well, Noah, I appreciate your wonderful story. Tell people how they can follow you, how they can. I think you've already said how you can buy your book. I'm definitely going to put your link to your book in the description so that they can check it out. I think it's amazing. If you have it, if anybody in prison, please send it to them because that could be their ray of hope that they need to get them on track to get them where they need to be. But yeah, tell people how they can find you.
Yeah, so the best thing to do is go to thenoaasher.com. On thenoaasher.com, you will find links to everywhere you can buy it. Like I said earlier, Walmart, Amazon, Barnes& and Noble, Books A Million, places like that. Um, it's in paperback, it's in hardback, it's an ebook, so I cover all the bases there. So you can also find links to other interviews I've done, some articles from like the U.S. Insider, things like that that have done features about me. And you can also find my Instagram handle there, but everything's there in the hub of thenoaasher.com.
All right, Noah, we appreciate you so much, and thank you again for that. That was some gems you dropped on us, and we appreciate that. Everybody needs that knowledge. So thank you again.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me.